Perhaps the most legendary, compact, 35mm point-and-shoot camera, the T2 doesn't need much of an introduction. From hobbyists to professionals, celebrities to novice photographers, the T2 really does a great job of offering an extremely high-quality point-and-shoot camera that anyone can excel with. Despite this and the inescapable hype, the camera's main selling point is its Zeiss 38mm 2.8 tiny lens. This retracting lens is probably the sharpest 35mm lens I've ever used. When shooting wide open, the bokeh and sharpness rendered on your subject is unmatched. The only lens I've used on 35mm that's rivaled it was a Voigtlander for my roommate's M2. Even when comparing the negatives, it's nearly impossible to tell the difference in sharpness between the Zeiss and another illustrious lens. Another interesting thing about the lens is that when selecting your aperture, f2.8 is actually the auto function. So that means if you're trying to shoot automatically, you cannot force the camera to shoot wide open unless the light requires it. That is one thing that kind of irks me with the T2, but I understand that the design is made with intention. Because it is a point and shoot, there tends to be more beginners using the camera, and it can be quite hard to hit that 2.8 focus even with a premium camera like the T2. So I would assume they doubled up with the auto on f2.8 as to help people not be so tunnel visioned with shooting wide open for that creamy bokeh, as the T2 doesn't have the most precise focusing and therefore is prone to missing a couple of shots on each roll. Moving on from the lens, the flash system. There's two settings on the camera that live on the lens, a single flash and a double flash. The flash is quite good and bright and is a tiny part of the camera, so all things being said, I think it's a great addition to the camera. It's really nice to be able to carry it completely pocketable without needing an external flash, despite me not using the flash all that often. Next up is the focus dial. Serving as the power button as well, the focus dial allows you to take the reins a bit more and control exactly where you want to aim focus. While it's not something that I use all the time with the camera, it still is really nice to have the control to shoot it more manually and to have some type of manipulation over the camera. I think this is especially worthwhile when there's something in the foreground and you want to focus on the background. These older point and shoots tend to aim closer for its focus, and it can be quite frustrating hoping to get one thing in focus, and when the scans get back, the opposite is. Lastly, the exposure compensation. While I don't use this a ton, it is nice to easily change exposure if a shot is really too dark or needs an extra stop or half stop of light. Lastly, before my overall thoughts, I want to talk about the build quality. It really is a premium built camera that's made of titanium, hence the T in the name. I've dropped it a handful of times from 3 to 4 feet up, and despite some dings and scratches, it's held up flawlessly. When I bought it initially, I was worried of the electronics taking a shit on me and failing, but obviously it's held up great, and with the growing popularity, thankfully there are more and more camera techs that understand and can service the T2. Another quick additional note before I wrap up, the battery life on this camera is seriously insane. Out of all my film cameras, this one lasts by far the longest. I think over the 2 years owning it, I put 2 different batteries in, which is obviously a nice boost. So, some final thoughts on the Contax T2. I think the T2 is an incredibly simple point and shoot equipped with a legendary lens while still feeling and having the build quality to really justify that price point. Now, I think it's gone a bit off the deep end with pricing, especially with people like Tom Holland using it and Frank Ocean using its younger brother, the T3, but I truly do think it's worth the price point. At some point, the price obviously will not justify owning it, but I think for the space it's at now, I would feel confident picking this camera up for the first time, or even buying a new one if this one was to break. I think it embodies the most perfect daily driver type camera that allows you to capture some incredibly sharp images while fitting it easily in a pocket or small bag. It allows you to shoot great photos without needing to think too hard about anything, and for that it carves out a unique spot in my pack of cameras and is one that I see myself growing old with and using forever.